It had been 18 months since my dad last accepted help in his flat, but last week he let me come in and help him tackle the kitchen after things in his flat had got a bit on top of him. And today I am back and I'm going to be tackling his loo and his bedroom. Here's me, here's my brother and sister, and here is the befores of his loo. I really want to tackle these doors and all the marks around them, but I need to prioritise what I get done today because I only have just under 5 hours. So he's a very small flat. It's more of a studio flat really. On one side of the flat he has a loo and a sink, and on the other side of the flat he has a shower and a sink. I haven't been able to get into the shower room to look at it in my last visit, but that is what I want to do with the bedroom basically, is give him proper access to his shower so that he doesn't have to move things out of the way. 18 months ago when I came and helped him out and cleaned this loo, it was full of limescale. I managed to get rid of a lot of it then, but it's still got quite a bit of limescale. So Dad has been putting some black Harpic on, which is stuff you could see there, and then I want to tackle a bit more of it today. So here is his bedroom. He has got clothes piled up at the end of the bed, a lot of stuff on this dresser, and then he has got clothes piled up in front of the wardrobe so that we can't yet get into it, stuff that needs to be put away on the front, and then we've even got a drone up here, guys. So here is the corridor that leads to the shower, which at the moment you have to remove quite a lot of stuff in order to access. So the aim of the game today is to declutter as much as we possibly can, including those cobwebs, and there are a lot of cobwebs in the flat. I am not a big fan of spiders, and 18 months ago when I helped out my dad, I found an absolute whopper in this bedroom. Like, he was big and he was chunky and he gave me the fright of my life. I don't mind spiders when they're like the skinny ones, even when they're the big skinny ones. I don't mind small spiders, but the ones that are big and fat give me the creeps. So I'm hoping that we don't encounter any more like that today. So first up, before I tackle anything in the bedroom, I want to get some stuff working away in the loo on the limescale. So firstly, I want to get rid of that Harpic because we do not mix chemicals. And by chemicals, I actually mean Coca-Cola. That is what somebody recommended in the last video to help get rid of the limescale. So what I want to do is get rid of the Harpic first, and then we want to empty all of the water out from the loo. Then basically we don't want to dilute anything, so that doesn't matter if you're using Coca-Cola or if you are using white vinegar or whatever it may be. To get rid of limescale, you want to remove the water first so you're not diluting what you're putting in next. So I'm using a plastic cup to get most of the water out, and then a sponge to get the last bits out of here. And then I'm going to be pouring in the Coca-Cola. So I haven't tried this method before. Let me know if you have, but I'm always up for trying something new. So you can see there the kind of the dark patches of limescale at the back. And I think the trouble with limescale, if you're in a hard water area like we are, then limescale makes things look dirty even when you have cleaned them. And it is basically like stone. It's really hard to get rid of. So I've poured in the Coke there, and while that is sitting for a couple of hours, we're going to tackle the bedroom. And the aim of the game of the bedroom, as I said, is to declutter. We want to get rid of as much as we possibly can. So my dad told me that the pile of clothing in front of the wardrobe was the stuff that he was wearing most. So he's wearing it, he's washing it, and then he's putting it back in the pile on the floor. The floor itself is quite grubby. There's a lot of dust and debris on there. So we want to get things off the floor as much as possible. And the wardrobe, in terms of hanging space, there's a lot of hanging space, there's a lot of room for clothes. It's not being utilised to the best here. At the top, we have lots of bits of kit. My dad has lots of hobbies. And as I said in the last video, he describes his flat as a shed with a bed. And I think that is very accurate. At the moment, his main hobbies are miniature railway. He also likes everything astronomy. So we've got lots of telescope bits in here, and we've got lots of stuff for other hobbies that he's had in the past, which have been flying model helicopters and planes. And we want to get rid of as much of that as possible because he's decided not to pursue that hobby anymore. And that's partly due to ill health. My dad really struggles with a heart condition. He's also got type 2 diabetes and various other ailments that prevent him from being as active as he'd like. But he'll be the first one to admit that cleaning is not his priority. He's not a big fan, but he does know that he needs to keep on top of things more. I also feel sorry for my dad because he basically got hold of this flat at a time when it was already, I guess, overrun with stuff. So it is his flat, but my brother lived in it first. And then there was a period of time when my dad and my brother lived in this 1-bedroom tiny flat. And that meant it quickly got overrun with stuff. It definitely is not big enough for 2 people. Like, it's pretty compact for 1 person. But my dad and my brother lived here for a few years together, actually, I believe it was. And at that time, my brother had the bedroom and my dad was sleeping on the sofa in the living room. And basically we ended up in a position where there was just way too much stuff and they couldn't keep on top of things. So when my brother moved out with his now wife, my dad still had quite a bit of my brother's stuff. And actually this photo album, which I'm going through there, I think we worked out that probably was my brother's. And then in the bottom of this wardrobe, we found more of my brother's things. We found a big box of CDs, we found some weights and various things of his, which have been long forgotten because he has lived with his wife for many years now. They have a 7-year-old together now. So they've been together for some time. And we really need to make sure that we are not just getting rid of my dad's things that he no longer needs, but we're definitely getting rid of my brother's stuff from here. So at the time when my dad started to live here on his own, the place was already a bit messy and in need of a really big kind of decluttering clean that basically just never happened. So now what I want to do, like bit by bit, is help my dad get back on top of things, or get on top of things, so that he's got a good starting position to going forward. Ideally, I'd love to be in a position where, having like fully decluttered the flat, we can start to redecorate and remodel some areas just to make it a much more calming, welcoming space for him. So my dad had some CDs and we basically went through them one by one and we put them into piles. We ended up with one pile that he was happy to get rid of, and then another couple of piles that he wanted to transfer to his computer. But I was really proud of my dad because, having spent the time doing this, deciding that we were going to get rid of that first pile, when I came back to move the other 2 piles, he basically said, look, you know, these have been in the wardrobe for years now, and I haven't thought to play them. I haven't thought that I've needed them. And, you know, I can get most of these CDs now online if I need to. So get rid of them, just get rid of a lot. And I was really proud of him. I think that he did so well when we did the kitchen declutter, and he really got in his stride there. And I felt like this was a bit of a clicking point for him, where he was just like, you know, this is an opportunity to clear some things, get back on top of things. And he really seized it. And that is awesome. The drone that was on top of the wardrobe, he told me, was actually broken, and he was going to repurpose it for some other projects, but realized that having sat on top of his wardrobe for some time, that was unlikely to happen. So that went in the to-go pile too, and we were well underway with our decluttering. This was a super dusty, like, oh my God, the amount of dust on this particular package. Turned out that this had a new filter for his cooker hood. So we took that out so that he could put that straight in. And then another massive box with another hobby project. That was some kind of like model ship that you could make. He told me he'd made the hull of it, but had broken that, had ditched that. So it was only part of that particular project left. We had a brand new set of paints here, which I checked over to make sure they were all sealed. And things like that, where we have things that are sealed that he doesn't want. They had this kind of drawing pad that clicks into a computer, which is in perfectly good condition, but he's not using them anymore. He wanted to get rid of them. I will gift them on locally. So we have a local Facebook group where I live, where people can list things and people come and collect them. I haven't had a great experience of this group recently, where I've had several people say that they want to collect things from me and then they just don't bother turning up. However, we shall persevere, and I'd much rather recycle things than put them in the tip. That said, I do have a time slot for today for the tip for 3:15, and anything that we want to get rid of and recycle, I'm going to take there. I know that there's going to be plenty of clothes that we're going to want to recycle from this room, and they have a textile recycling bin at our tip, which means that everything will get used one way or another. If things are good enough to be passed on to other people, they will be, and where fabric is not good enough to be passed on to others, it basically gets like shredded up and used for other things, like the lining of car doors apparently, which I think is really cool. So there is an awful lot of dust up here and cobwebs, which I want to remove as much as possible. We're not going to be doing any deep cleans today, and I am definitely not going to be able to clean the whole of this room, but where we manage to clear spaces, I want to get rid of the worst of the mess so that at some point in the future, when we've like fully decluttered, I can come back in and give each room a really good deep clean. Now, I should have bought some of my special dusters to get into small gaps, but I managed to wedge my arm in between this wardrobe. And now I said I'm not a big fan of spiders, but I'm not going to let that stop me from getting on top of this room. There was a lot of grime on this door, so while I'm here, I'm just giving that a quick once over. The floor also, we're hoping to get the hoover around there and just do as much as possible in the time that we have today. I want to make sure that I give myself enough time to give the loo a good once over. That doesn't need any decluttering as such, but it needs a really good scrub. And again, I'm not going to be doing any deep cleaning. I think I could spend 5 hours easily on one small area of these projects, but oh my goodness, look at the colour of that water. That was so satisfying. We managed to clear several buckets full of water like that. And while luckily my dad doesn't struggle with any respiratory issues, I am sure that he will be breathing much more easily without some of this dust in the bedroom. I think a project like this works really well because basically we can declutter a section, and then while I am wiping things down, my dad can take a bit of a break and rest. So I don't want to have him standing up for too long, especially with his heart condition. I want to make sure that he's taking it as easy as he possibly can. But he's obviously really keen to help me. So what you don't see for a lot of these shots is that my dad is nearby, kind of chatting through what he's got in various places, what he thinks we can clear. One of the issues with this cupboard is actually the back of the cupboard has pinged loose on one side. So perhaps we'll be able to fix that at a later date and stop some of the dust from coming into this space. But I made sure that I gave it all a really good wipe over because we don't want to be hanging up clothes in a dusty space. But also because there is a general damp issue with the flat, I want to make sure that I don't leave it wet. So we've dried all that down before we're going to be putting any clothing back in this space. The heaters in the flat aren't great, but also because it is a small flat, my dad has some separate little electric heaters in the main living space, which work pretty well. But in the future, it'd be really good to remove the old storage heaters that don't work well, including in this bedroom. My dad has an electric blanket though, so don't worry, he's keeping plenty warm at night. But heating the space properly definitely helps with damp. And there is a bit of mold in this bedroom that we're going to need to tackle at a later date. He has tackled the worst of it, but I noticed that there was some mold around the window. I'd love to tackle that in the future. So what we're doing now is putting back some of the hobby items for my dad at the top of the wardrobe and then hanging up some of the clothes. I made the decision to get rid of some hangers at this stage in the project, which with hindsight was a bit of an odd choice because we hadn't worked out exactly what we needed to hang back up, but luckily I didn't get rid of too many. So now what I am doing is cleaning and wiping down some of his telescope stands and a camping chair that he uses when he's stargazing at night, so that we can put those into the bottom of the wardrobe and stop having them propped up at the end of the bed. So that's where I am right now, perched on the end of the bed, and we're going to go through this pile of clothes. Again, this is some clothing that my dad is wearing more regularly, so we know that with the items that are on the top that he's wearing more often, that we can keep those, and then we can make some quick decisions about some of the other things. I love that as we were going through this pile and coming across trousers, my dad couldn't remember exactly what size he was, so we got to a pair of trousers here that actually looked pretty good. They look pretty much brand new. And my dad went and got a measuring tape to measure his waist to check what a size he was, and decided that they were probably going to be a little bit too on the slim side for him. Unfortunately, where things have been propped up against the storage heater that is broken and is very dusty, some of the items have got quite dusty. But also, my dad didn't want to do tons of washing because in a small flat where there isn't a lot of space to dry clothing, and the clothing itself was clean, it was just dusty in patches. So basically, you can see me going through dusting various items, and there were one or two that were too dusty that my dad had to take away to wash. We uncovered a toaster, and I was like, why is there a toaster in your bedroom, Dad? And he told me that there had been insufficient room in the kitchen for the toaster, but because we had tackled so much of it last weekend, there is now plenty of space on the kitchen counters for the toaster to go back to where it should belong. I have come armed with a couple of new towels for my dad, so we're going through a few of those, working out what the best ones are to keep and clearing some of the rest. My dad has a lot of clothes, and he basically said that he got in a position where he couldn't find the ones he wanted, couldn't keep track of what he had, and he'd also done a bit of panic shopping in the past. So particularly in 2020 when we had the pandemic, and there was a time where all of the shops were shut. When they started to reopen again, my dad said that he worried about what would happen going forward with the pandemic, what he might need or not, and did a bit of panic bulk shopping. So he queued up with everyone else for Primark to reopen, and when he went in, he just bought armfuls of t-shirts and trousers, and still has a lot of those now and hasn't been wearing them. And I think this is understandable, especially when you've come of an age like my dad and my mum were children born in like a post-World War II era where their parents had, lived through rationing, and they had that kind of mentality of, things might run out and needing to keep things just in case. And that has really stuck with my dad. And he can definitely see now though that he needs to live more minimally, not as a minimalist, but more minimally. Having gone through that pile of clothing at the bottom of his bed, we uncovered a suitcase more full of clothing. My dad hasn't been in the suitcase for years, but we did uncover a few really good items, some nice warm thick shirts and jumpers that my dad chose to keep. But I would say the bulk of this we got rid of, so that will all go to the clothing recycling. Not the Santa tie though. Everyone needs a Santa tie. I remember that tie from my childhood. My dad would wear that to work. And that brought back a lot of fond memories, and I'm pleased to say that he knew that needed to be kept. So I look forward to seeing that next Christmas. But otherwise, the bulk of this stuff, as I say, we can get rid of, and also the suitcase itself, which is a very, very old suitcase. So this one can go, hopefully somebody will be able to make use of it. What we want to do with clothing is get everything that my dad is keeping into the wardrobe and the chest of drawers. So now I am piling the stuff we've decided to get rid of from the suitcase and into the bed into plastic bags, and then we'll start hanging some things up so that we can see better how much it is that we're going to be putting into those drawers. The drawers themselves, so my dad tells me, do have stuff in them, but he doesn't know what is in them because he hasn't been using the drawers. So we've got a bunch of rubbish and a lot of cobwebs and dust at the end of this bed. So now I'm using these hangers that I've decided to keep to hang up all the shirts, hang up some of the jumpers and jackets, and get those put away into the wardrobe so that we can see how much we need to put in the chest of drawers. But before putting things away into the chest of drawers, we're going to need to go through it. This is a pretty solid chest of drawers, but I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan. It's kind of got this weird decorative front. So at the front of every drawer is glass, and then there is a space of, I want to say 3 to 4 centimeters before you get to another piece of wood. We could take that piece of wood out, and that's what I did in order to clean the inside of the drawers. But that front bit of drawers had just gathered an awful lot of dust and cobwebs. But apparently the idea is that you put like dried flowers or something in the front of the drawers to make it more decorative. Now, my dad's never going to do that, and he did suggest maybe we take the piece of wood out to give more space in the drawers, which makes sense. But of course, then you will just be able to see the clothing, which I think will look really messy. I don't know if that matters though, when it comes to just utilizing the space. So I found it hard to make this decision, and I basically just put the pieces of wood back in, and I managed to squeeze all the clothes back in, but it was pretty tight. So what would you do? Would you go back and take these bits of wood out? So that's what I'm holding up right now. As you can see, they kind of slot in just behind the drawer front, and that definitely does limit the space that we have in the drawers. So you can see when it comes to the trousers, so I wanted to ideally get all of the trousers into this bottom drawer, but I couldn't do that because there wasn't quite enough space. And my dad has really like thick, quite a few sets of thick padded trousers for when he's doing his stargazing at night and he needs to keep warm. So there's only about 6 pairs of trousers in this drawer, and the drawer itself was really stuck on one side. I think it's just become a bit warped in time, probably needs sanding down. I did later take the whole drawer out, have a look behind it, make sure there was nothing like getting stuck on it, but I couldn't see anything at the back there that was causing the drawer to become stuck. So I think it's just that over time it's become a bit warped. So there's loads and loads of t-shirts in this drawer. This is definitely the drawer that got filled up during the pandemic. And most of these my dad isn't wearing. Some of them we did keep, and we did go through them, pretty much one by one. I was holding things up and my dad was making really good, quick decisions. And I think that is really useful, that kind of exercise of just going with your gut and making an instant yes, no decision without overthinking things. At the end of the day, these are items which can easily be replaced if my dad regrets a decision, but we also know that he has plenty of clothes. And I think he'll be able to wear much more once he can see more. There's a lot of dust in these drawers and they look so much better for a good wipe down. But again, I put this wood back in and I'm kind of regretting it now that I'm looking at it again, but I'm going to be going back there in another few weeks to help him tackle more of the bedroom and the living room. So we can always take that bit of wood out at the time. Ideally, I'd like to change up the storage in this bedroom entirely. And I made a few suggestions to my dad while I was there. But at the moment, he's not too keen. And I think he's right. We need to fully declutter the rooms before we make decisions about what storage we need. So we have this unit, which you can see just to the left of me, which is kind of basically like a wooden frame with canvas around it. I don't think we can call this a wardrobe. It's not a wardrobe as such. It's some kind of storage unit. It's not very sturdy. It's also pretty wide, so it restricts the room that we have going down to the shower room. And it's not like we're not utilising it as best as possible as well. There's quite a lot of gaps in it. And I was suggesting some kind of Kallax-y type IKEA solution might be a good idea. But then my dad also has some bigger pieces of kit in this unit when it comes to his telescopes. He also has the 3D printer in there, and they are very heavy and there's no way that kind of thing would fit in a Kallax cube. So I'm not sure that that is the best solution, but it would be more narrow and I think it would be a good use of the space. We just have to think about what we're using there. And I'm wondering if there might even be a bit of space in the boiler cupboard, which is on the opposite wall to that particular unit. But we did not have time today to get all the way down to the end of that side of the bedroom. We really were just tackling clothes in the time that we had. I only had about a 10-minute break today, so it was a case of just powering through, getting as much done as we possibly could in the time that we had, because it's going to be another kind of 2 or 3 weeks before I can come back and help out again. And I really want to get as much done as possible and make the biggest impact in the time that we had. I know that my dad found that what we did last week in the kitchen really helped him feel much more positive in his flat. And I could see that he was taking much better care of the kitchen as a result. He's going to find cooking so much easier. And I think that just because his kitchen is on the edge of his main living space, it will just help to make the whole area feel a bit calmer and clearer. We didn't have time to tackle much on top of the cupboard today, but my dad had promised me that he will start to go through those things in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully when I get back, that will be looking a lot clearer. And I'd love to get him in a position where he's got some actual space, like flat surfaces, which don't have things on them. Because I know, as I've been going through my own house decluttering the last couple of months, the more flat surfaces I uncover, the calmer I feel. There's just something about having things like actually out of sight which really helps. So now we are on to tackling the sock drawers, and actually, as it turned out, my dad had a lot of brand new socks that still had the labels on, so we were able to get rid of a lot of the ones that he's currently been wearing, which are looking a bit tired and worn out. After tackling these drawers, we actually had a quick look in the drawers under my dad's bed, and they weren't full up at all and had some like of his project stuff in, bits of wood and various bits of paper that he felt like he probably didn't need anymore. So another job that he's going to do in the next few weeks is to clear out those drawers under the bed, and then I think we can put a lot of the stuff which is on top of that chest of drawers in those drawers under his bed and get it out of sight. So now I am just scooping up all the rubbish, all of the old socks and so on, and getting a bit of space back in his bedroom. As you can see at the end of the bed, we also have some rubbish which is built up there. I'm packing some things away at the top of his wardrobe. We have a bunch of pictures that we found in the kitchen last week, and I'm putting those in the bottom of the wardrobe with some other pictures so we can sort through those at a later date. And we've got a load of wrapping paper here, and this is really old wrapping paper because some time ago my dad decided that instead of buying presents and having to store the presents and wrap the presents and deliver them, that he would just be sending money to like the grandkids, etc., me and my brother and sister for our birthdays, and I totally understand that. I think you get to a certain age, buying gifts gets really stressful. I saw that this Christmas with my mother-in-law, who she said she found buying presents for people really stressful this year. And I do think you get to a point, some families are very much like gift givers. And I think some people can almost be a bit offended with having money or vouchers. But I always think with money, it can be tempted just to stick it in your bank account and then forget about it so you don't end up actually buying something with it that is meaningful. But I always make an effort when it comes to money that my dad's sent for us or the kids, that I buy something like particular with it and let him know what we have got. And I always have gifts, like a gift list on my phone, like at all times, things that the kids say that they're interested in or that I see for them that I like. And then when it comes to Christmas, I will actually go and buy particular things using that money, and then I'll wrap them up for the kids, like from Granddad, so they have a physical thing from their grandparent. So I could not tackle this window. I can't do the best job in the time that I have, but I had to do something given the extent of the cobwebs on here. And it looks instantly so much better. As I say, there is mould at the top of the windowsill, which you can see, and we don't have time to tackle that today, but I'm really pleased with how that turned out. Now, while I am tackling the loo, my dad is going to run the Hoover around his bedroom. So first things first, we've got the Coke that's been sat in there for a few hours, and I'm using some wire wool just to try to tackle some of that limescale. But because the Coke is dark in colour, I couldn't easily see what I was doing. I've got towels like falling on me there. So we needed to flush the Coke away basically. And then I am using a cleaning product here to just go around the loo. And basically my plan here is to get the worst of it off, and then I'm going to go back over the loo for a second time. So I'm using a Scrub Daddy, and you can see there on top of the loo seat like how much dust and grime that shifted. Like it doesn't look too bad unless you're like close to it, because everything's kind of in a perfect layer of grime basically. And my dad's obviously giving the loo a wipe over, and he's been putting things, toilet cleaner in the loo. But I have a personal issue with toilet cleaner because I just think like toilet cleaner doesn't actually do anything, and what you really need is to be putting a little bit of bleach around the toilet like once a week. So it's a small space and it was definitely not built for my oversized hoodie, which had to go. I put my running kit on for this clean, not because it's a workout, although it was a workout, but because I fully intended on going for a run when I got home, but I was so tired. That did not happen. But being in my running kit definitely gave me that like mentality of like being at the gym or something. I am not a gym bunny. So now I'm just wiping the loo down to get that kind of first layer of grime off. And then basically with it comes to the cloths for the toilet, like we absolutely could wash them, but because it had been like quite a lot of grime built up over quite a period of time, we decided that that cloth would go in the bin after this particular job. And that's okay, but on a day-to-day basis, if you're cleaning your loo, then just, throw the cloths in the washing machine afterwards. And we definitely do not use the same gloves and cloth for cleaning the loo as other areas of the house. But because I didn't have many sets of gloves, I actually bleached these gloves after I had cleaned the loo so that I could use them on the sink and the floor. So bleach is kind of the only thing that really like gets rid of everything. I was just looking at the instructions on the toilet cleaner here and I was like, there is absolutely no bleach in this. I do not want to use this. So my dad has some bleach in the kitchen, which he brought over, and that is what I put down the loo. And now, having done the first clean of the loo, I'm now using a bleach-based cleaner to go back over the whole of the toilet. And I'm using toilet paper so that I can put it straight into the loo afterwards. I think that's kind of, pretty environmentally friendly in my opinion, in terms of that it will break down. Usually toilet paper is recycled material in the first place, and now that we have done that and I have cleaned the gloves with the bleach product, I'm going to get started on the sink. So I bought this cleaning mousse. I've never used this before actually, but it did pretty well. And sometimes I think a project like this is the kind of project where you can try out a few new products. So the cleaner did say that you should spray it on and then you should leave it for 10 to 15 minutes, but I did not have 10 to 15 minutes to leave it. So I had to get started pretty much immediately. Now, like the rest of the house, we have a problem with limescale on the sink. So there's a lot of limescale around the actual tap and like around under the tap and also on the sink itself. So the Scrub Daddies are really good for this because they are a much firmer sponge, and I'm just getting like really like into that kind of area behind the tap. Now, usually I would bring with me a flathead screwdriver that you can kind of very gently tease off limescale around taps with, but you have to be careful because you can easily scratch them. But I didn't bring anything like that, and also I just didn't have time to hunt out tools that I did have. I'm sure my dad has probably about 20 flathead screwdrivers, quite frankly. But look how satisfying this is, taking off that layer of muck there. There is just something about transforming a space like that in a reasonably short period of time. It's so satisfying. I got rid of an awful lot of limescale around the tap, but I will in a future date, we'll do a really good, like serious deep clean of this area and get rid of that limescale. But as I said, this is not a deep clean day. This is just doing the best that we can in the time that we have. There's a bunch of gunk in that plug, which was stopping the water from going down. Got rid of that, and then that made things a lot easier. So now, once I have cleaned this sink, my intention is basically to spray that mousse all around the floor area and as much of the tiling as possible before it runs out, and then let it sit for a while and then try and tackle some of those marks on the doors. But at this point, I know I am quickly running out of time. My dad is giving me time checks, like every 15 minutes he's calling out how much time we have left on my request. So I need to get moving with this. I sprayed as much of that, well, I basically used up the whole can of this mousse on the floor and on the tiles on the wall as well before moving on. So we're letting that mousse sit That's doing its thing. And then I'm using pink stuff to get rid of these marks. And pink stuff is basically a cream cleaner. It's really good at getting stains and marks off of things. And I'm going over the whole of this door, but unfortunately I did not have time to do the other side of the door, and I didn't have time to do the other door that leads to the loo. And this really annoyed me. I hate leaving a project like part done, and it felt like I'd really wanted to tackle those doors. I had my eye on those doors last week when I visited, and I really wanted to get both of them done. And ideally I'd have loved to have done the floor in the kind of area between the loo and the living room where we have the fridge freezer, but again, we just didn't have time, and we can only do the best we can do in the time that we have. This made visually like a massive difference. So now it's time for me to go around with my Scrub Daddy, just giving everything a really good scrub over, including the underside of the sink, which I hadn't done when I did the main sink clean, going over the walls, getting as much grime off as we possibly can. And in an ideal world, I'd have done a once over on the floor and then I've gone back over it for a second time. But I knew I wasn't going to have time to do that. So once I've given every area a really good scrub down, I'm just going to be getting buckets of hot water and using a microfiber cloth to mop up as much as we possibly can. So starting with the walls, always starting up high and then working your way down. Otherwise, you'll find yourself having to go back over areas time and time again. So in starting with the walls, we basically aim to move all the grime down, lower down, so that by the time I get to the floor, I am picking up all of the last of those bits of grime. And then I want to dry the floor as best I can before putting the new mats down, which I'm really excited for. I think that after you clean an area like this, like putting out new towels and new mats just gives it a bit of a new lease of life. Ideally, we would be replacing this loo and sink, which must be so old now, but they work perfectly well. And my dad doesn't want to be spending any money out on any real significant home improvements. Every time I suggested that we do something in the house or we get something new, he would always say, "Oh, it'll outlive me." So this is just a reminder of what things were like when we started this particular clean. You can see the marks on the doors here. And this was what the loo was looking like at the start of today. These mats have gone in the bin. They were definitely not salvageable. The towels are salvageable. They can go in the washing machine, but not the mats that were on the floor. Here is how everything was looking. Just had a kind of general layer of muck over everything in the bathroom. And my dad had been trying, absolutely. But this door, look how much better that door is looking. I'm just gutted, look, that I couldn't do the same for this one in the time that I had. But it's looking so much brighter. It's amazing how much a small area can be transformed in basically, I think was in total about an hour and a half. So the sink's looking lots better. We've got the new mats out. The floor is looking great. Toilet's positively shiny. The lime scale is looking loads better in there. There's a tiny bit still there, but it's looking loads better. I think the Coke worked reasonably well, surprisingly, so there you go. And just a reminder of what the bedroom was looking like when we started this day. Lot of muck on that floor and an awful lot of clothes. We've got clothes everywhere. We've got clothes at the end of the bed, clothes in front of the wardrobe. We've got clothes in that particular set of drawers, and also, not that I realised it at the time, we had a whole suitcase full of clothes at the end of the bed. Got this suit hanging up here which really needs to go away, and a drone of all things on the wardrobe. Plenty, and I mean plenty, of cobwebs. Look at those. They were ridiculous and they were everywhere. Cobwebs all around this window. A lot of condensation, a lot of muck and grime that we were able to get rid of. Look how much better it is now. Now my dad's only given it a very brief hoover, but even so, with just a short space of time spent, we have cleared so much and is looking so much tidier. My dad's got the floor looking really good. Yes, we need to sort out the top of the chest of drawers at some point, but the piles of clothes are gone. The wardrobe has nothing on top of it now. No cobwebs, no drone, no things, and is looking so much better. Cobwebs are all gone. We've given the wall a good wash down here. We've given that door a good clean. And then inside the wardrobe, we've got everything hanging really nicely. A few items from my dad's hobbies, some towels there within easy reach. And in the bottom, he's got photographs, family photos, which we can sort through at a later date. Get a nice memory box going, I think, for him there. And then this particular area, we're just going to have to come back and tackle that another day. But my dad did say he has space at the end of his bed now to put some of those items. Here's everything we got rid of. So much stuff. I'm so proud of my dad again for making such great decisions. Those weights there that all my brothers that we can get rid of. This bag at the top is all things that we're going to give away locally. We've got a massive box full of CDs. Bags upon bags upon bags of clothing to go to the clothing recycle. A couple of bags of rubbish as well in amongst all that stuff. The suitcase is going, and then over here we've got a blind and we've got the drone. They're all going too. So catch me in a future video where we'll be going back to my dad's and doing more. In the meantime, I'm actually going to go to my mum's house and do some decluttering there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Give my dad a cheer because he's doing so well, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.